Marcus Thorne walked into the restaurant with an arrogant smile. He placed his order in French, expecting to humiliate the server in front of everyone. But Clara Dubois was no ordinary server. She spoke 7 languages and guarded a secret that would change everything. The restaurant, the Maple Grill, was at its peak that Friday night. The tables were full, the sound of cutlery clanging against plates, laughter mixed with lively conversations. Clara Dubois had been on her feet for 6 hours, moving between tables with her tray held high, smiling even though her feet were burning like fire. She had learned to always smile, even when she didn't want to, even when customers treated her as if she were invisible. She was 28, but sometimes she felt like she had lived twice as long. Her pink uniform with a white apron was impeccable, as always. Her hair was tied back in a perfect bun, everything in place, everything controlled, because that was the only thing she could control in her life. Her appearance, her professionalism, her mask of tranquility. The restaurant door opened and 3 men walked in. Clara noticed them immediately. It was impossible not to. Expensive suits that screamed money, watches that probably cost more than she would earn in a year. They walked with that confidence that only people accustomed to doors opening automatically for them possess. The man in the center was the most imposing, perfectly groomed gray hair, square jaw, broad shoulders. He had that air of authority that made heads turn as he passed. His eyes scanned the room like a predator assessing its territory. Marcus Thorne. Clara didn't know his name yet, but she recognized the type. She had seen him hundreds of times at the Royal York Hotel, where she worked for 4 years. Entrepreneurs, executives, men who measured their worth by the size of their bank account and the price of their shoes. Marcus pointed to the center table, the most visible in the restaurant. It was not accidental, it never was with people like this. They wanted to be seen, admired, envied. Clara finished serving table 6, passed through the kitchen to drop off the order, and walked toward the 3 men. She took a deep breath. Just another customer, just another table, just another night. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said with her best professional smile, opening her notepad. "Do you know what you'd like to order? Or do you need a few minutes?" Marcus Thorne looked up at her. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, not with interest, but with disdain, like someone looking at old furniture in a second-hand shop. Then he smiled, and Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that smile. It was the smile that came before something bad. "Il nous faut quelques minutes," Marcus said in slow French, looking directly into her eyes. "Mais je doute que la qualité ici soit à la hauteur de nos standards." The 2 accompanying men laughed. One of them, with glasses and a blue tie, added, also in French, "Au moins, c'est pas cher, non?" Clara did not blink. She did not change her expression. She simply kept her notepad open and waited as if she had heard nothing but insignificant noise, but she had understood every word. "We need a few minutes. But I doubt the quality here meets our standards. At least it's cheap, right?" Marcus continued to stare at her, waiting for her to ask him to repeat himself, waiting for her to blush, waiting for her to show that she was lost, confused, humiliated. Clara knew every word they had said. She had worked 4 years receiving tourists from all over the world at the Royal York. She learned French conversing with Quebecois executives in the lobby bar. She learned German with businessmen, complaining about everything. Spanish with couples on honeymoon. Italian with noisy families. English was natural. Portuguese came easily due to similarity with Spanish. Japanese arrived little by little. Basic Mandarin Chinese too. She understood 7 languages, but they didn't know it, and she wasn't going to give them the pleasure of knowing. Not yet. "I'll give you a few more minutes then," Clara said in English with the same calm, polite voice she used with all customers. "When you're ready, just call me." She turned on her heel and walked away. She felt their eyes glued to her back. She heard their muffled laughter. In the kitchen, her co-worker Sarah was waiting with raised eyebrows. "Who are those guys?" she asked. "They look unbearable." "They are," Clara replied, putting her notepad on the counter. "But only for tonight. Tomorrow I won't remember them." It was a lie. She already knew she would remember them because people like them left a mark. Not the kind that makes you better, but the kind that reminds you how invisible you can be to some. 5 minutes later, she returned to the table. Marcus Thorne was still talking in French with his companions, gesticulating widely, laughing at something that was probably not funny. "Have you decided what you'll order?" Clara asked, notepad in hand. Marcus leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and looked at her condescendingly. "Do you have anything good here?" he asked in slow French, almost spelling out each word. Clara wrote something in her notepad without looking at him. "Qu'est-ce que tu en penses, Mort?" Ils doivent avoir au moins un plat décent ici. Marcus asked his companion in French. What do you think, Mort? They must have at least one decent dish here. Difficile à croire, the other replied, laughing quietly. Hard to believe. Clara finished writing in her notepad and looked up. I can suggest the prime rib au jus. It's our most requested dish. Her voice remained firm, professional, as if nothing had happened. Marcus ordered the prime rib, and the other two did too. She wrote everything down, confirmed the drinks, thanked them, and turned away. As she walked away, she heard Marcus speak even louder in French. Les gens comme elle ne s'en sortent jamais d'ici. Ils ne font même pas l'effort de comprendre le monde. Clara gripped her notepad tighter, but did not stop. She did not turn around. She gave no sign. She passed the order to the kitchen, served 3 other tables, brought drinks, cleared dishes, worked as she always did, with efficiency, with discretion. But inside, something was simmering. Something that had been dormant for 6 months was waking up. 20 minutes later, she brought the plates, placing them in front of each customer carefully, without spilling anything. Enjoy your meal, she said. She was about to leave when Marcus called her back. Miss, he did not use her name, although the tag with Clara was clearly visible on her chest. Just Miss. Bring me more water and make sure it's cold this time. The water on the table was half full and was cold. Clara nodded. Of course, she went to get it. When she returned with the pitcher, Marcus was talking to his colleagues about some business, alternating between English and Spanish. He took the pitcher from her hands without looking at her, without thanking her, and continued his conversation as if she were part of the furniture. Clara stood there for 2 seconds, 3, waiting for something. A thank you, a gesture, any minimum recognition that she existed. Nothing came. She turned and left. But this time, when she passed the kitchen, the manager David stopped her. Are you okay? He asked quietly. That table is bothering you. I'm fine, Clara replied. Are you sure? Because that guy is being a complete jerk. I'm used to it, David. I've seen worse. And it was true. She had seen worse. But that didn't make it easier. The shift continued. Marcus and his colleagues finished eating, ordered dessert, drank coffee. All the while they continued to make comments in French about the place, about the food, about the level of people who worked in places like this. Clara heard everything, memorized every word, but kept her face empty of emotion. When they finally asked for the check, Marcus handed over his credit card without looking at her. She brought the terminal, he swiped the card, signed the receipt, and left no tip. Then he stood up, adjusted his jacket, and looked at Clara for the first time with real attention. Merci, he said in English, but the tone was condescending, as if he were doing her a favor. You tried your best. The 3 men left laughing. Clara stood by the empty table, holding the tray with the dirty dishes. Her hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from contained rage. David appeared at her side. What a jerk. Yes, but he'll be back. How do you know? Because people like that always come back. Clara turned toward the kitchen. And when he comes back, it's going to be different. Because something had changed. Marcus Thorne had crossed a line, and Clara Dubois was ready to act. Clara arrived at her apartment that night with her body exhausted and her mind racing. The small 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building greeted her with its usual silence. Peeling walls, old furniture, but it was hers. Or at least it would be when she finished paying the overdue rent. She dropped her bag on the frayed sofa and walked straight to the bathroom. She needed to shower. She needed the hot water to wash away the tension accumulated in her shoulders, the knot in her throat, the rage she had been suppressing for hours. Under the shower, she closed her eyes and let the water run over her face. Marcus Thorne's words resonated in her head like an annoying echo. People like her never leave these places. They don't even try to understand the world. The tears, mixed with the water, they were not tears of sadness. They were of frustration, because part of her feared that he was right, that she really would stay trapped there, serving tables, invisible, forgotten. But another part of her, the part that had struggled for years to learn 7 languages without anyone's help, that part knew that Marcus Thorne was completely wrong. She got out of the shower, wrapped herself in an old towel, and sat on the edge of the bed. She took her cell phone and opened the French language application she still had installed. She hadn't opened it for 3 months. The screen showed a maximum streak of 347 days, C1 level. She ran her finger across the screen, remembering the sleepless nights, studying, the embarrassing mistakes at the beginning, the satisfaction of finally understanding a complete conversation without translation. She closed the application and lay back on the bed, looking at the damp-stained ceiling. Her mind traveled 4 years back, when things were different. when she was different. The Royal York was one of the most prestigious hotels in the city. 5 stars, marble lobby, guests from all over the world. Clara had started there at 24 as a night shift receptionist. She didn't know any languages when she started, only English, and a high school French that barely allowed her to say bonjour without stumbling. But the hotel never stopped. Germans arrived asking about tours. French speakers complained about the air conditioning. Italians wanted restaurant recommendations. Japanese needed directions. Brazilians asked for information in Portuguese. And Clara was always there at the counter, without being able to say, "I don't know" or "I don't understand." So she started learning the hard way, in practice. She wrote down phrases she heard. She asked guests to teach her how to say this or that. She downloaded apps on her phone and studied during her lunch breaks. She watched YouTube videos at 3 inches the morning when she couldn't sleep. She made mistakes constantly, mixed up words, conjugated verbs incorrectly, but she kept trying. A year later, she spoke English fluently, functional French, basic German. Italian was coming along. Portuguese was natural due to its similarity to Spanish. She learned Japanese from an elderly couple who stayed at the hotel for 3 weeks and had the patience to teach her. Mandarin Chinese was the most difficult, but she achieved a basic conversational level, and no one at the hotel had any idea of what she had achieved on her own. The managers adored her. "Clara solves everything," they said. "Send any guest to her." And they did. She became the person everyone looked for when they had problems with foreigners. But then the hotel closed. Economic crisis, accumulated debts. One morning they called all the employees and broke the news. 30 days to cease operations. After that, everyone was on their own. Clara looked for work in other hotels. She sent her resume to dozens of places, but the city had few hotels of that level, and all of them already had a full staff. The answers were always the same. "We will keep your resume on file. If a vacancy opens up, we will contact you. We currently do not have any positions available." Months passed. The money ran out. The rent was overdue. The electricity was cut twice. Clara needed anything that would allow her to pay the bills. That's when she saw the ad for the Maple Grill restaurant. Server needed, experience not required, apply in person. She went the same day. The manager David looked at her and asked if she had customer service experience. She said yes. He hired her on the spot. He didn't ask about languages. He didn't ask about the hotel. He didn't ask anything beyond the basics. And Clara didn't mention it because she knew it wouldn't make a difference. No one spoke German or Japanese in that restaurant. No one needed translation. The customers were local, simple people who ordered daily specials and paid in cash. She was just another server, and that was fine. At least it paid the bills. But that night, after 6 months of serving tables without using anything she had learned, Marcus Thorne had entered the restaurant and decided that she was invisible, that she was stupid, that she understood nothing. And that hurt in a way Clara didn't expect. She got out of bed and walked to the small window of her apartment. The city shone outside, lights twinkling on distant buildings, people living their lives, people with important jobs, people who had never had to choose between paying the electricity bill or buying food. She picked up her phone again and opened the browser. She typed translator jobs, bilingual jobs, interpreter wanted. The same results as always. The same companies, the same demands, minimum 5 years of experience, university degree in languages, availability for international travel. Clara did not have a university degree. She had learned everything herself in practice, at the hotel counter, making mistakes and correcting herself. But that didn't count for anyone. The papers mattered more than the skills. She closed the browser and threw the phone onto the bed. Tomorrow would be another day, another shift, other tables, other customers, and maybe, just maybe, Marcus Thorne would return, because people like him always returned. They liked to have an audience. They liked to feel superior. And if he returned, Clara would be ready. She didn't know exactly what she would do yet, but she knew she wasn't going to let the opportunity pass by. Again, she turned off the light and closed her eyes. The fatigue of her body screamed for rest, but her mind was still racing, thinking, planning, imagining scenarios. And, for the first time in 6 months, Clara slept with something more than worry in her head. She slept with determination. The next 3 days passed slowly. Clara worked on autopilot, serving tables, smiling at customers, carrying dishes, collecting miserable tips, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time the restaurant door opened, her heart accelerated slightly, expecting to see him walk in, hoping Marcus Thorne would return. He didn't appear on Tuesday, nor on Wednesday. By Thursday, Clara began to think that maybe he wouldn't come back after all. Maybe it had just been a bad night, and he was already forgotten. But Friday arrived, and with it, Marcus Thorne. It was 2 inches the afternoon, lunchtime. The restaurant was full as usual. Clara was balancing 2 plates when she saw the door open. There he was. Marcus Thorne entered alone this time. Impeccable gray suit, leather briefcase in hand, phone glued to his ear. He spoke loudly, gesticulating with his free hand, occupying the space as if it belonged to him. Clara's heart accelerated, but she didn't stop. She finished serving the table, collected the empty dishes from another, and returned to the counter. David was organizing the orders. "That guy's back," he said in a low voice, discreetly pointing toward Marcus. "The jerk, from the other time." "I know," Clara replied. "Do you want someone else to serve him?" Clara took a deep breath. "No, I'll take care of him." David frowned. "Are you sure?" "Completely." She took her notepad, adjusted her uniform, and walked toward the table Marcus had chosen, the same one in the center. Of course, he was still on the phone when she arrived. He made broad gestures with his free hand. He was speaking in English with someone on the other end of the line. "Yes, I understand the concern, but we need to close this by Monday," he said impatiently. "No, that's not acceptable. Put pressure on them." Clara stood waiting. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Marcus didn't look at her once. He finally hung up the phone and threw it onto the table forcefully. Then he looked up, saw Clara, and his face showed something akin to recognition. "Ah, you again," he said without greeting, without courtesy. "Bring the menu." Clara opened her notepad. "You already know the menu, sir. Would you like me to suggest something? Or do you prefer to choose?" Marcus looked at her more closely this time, as if trying to decipher something that didn't make sense. "You have a good memory, huh? You remember the customers?" "I remember the ones who return." He smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Well, then you already know that I don't accept lukewarm food or slow service." He spoke slowly, as if explaining to a child. "Understood. Perfect." Marcus opened his briefcase, took out some papers, and began to read them. "Bring me a well-done prime rib, rice, French fries, and sparkling water. Quick." Clara wrote everything down. "Anything else?" "No." He didn't even look at her. He was already reading the documents, completely disconnected. She turned to leave, but before taking 2 steps, she heard his voice again, this time in French. "Cet endroit est toujours triste," he said to no one in particular, just talking out loud. "Mais au moins c'est bon marché. This place is still sad, but at least the food is cheap." Clara stopped. She felt the blood rush to her face. Her hands gripped the notepad tightly. She could turn around, she could answer him, she could show him that she had understood every word, but she didn't. She took a deep breath, counted to 3, and kept walking. She passed the order to the kitchen, served 2 other tables, brought drinks, cleared dishes, working automatically, but with her mind completely awake. Marcus had returned, and he had returned alone, without his colleagues, without an audience to impress. That changed everything, because now, Clara had the perfect stage for her plan, a plan that had just fully formed in her mind. And when the time came, Marcus Thorne would discover that he had underestimated the wrong person. 15 minutes later, Clara returned to Marcus's table with the steaming plate. She placed it in front of him carefully, making sure everything was perfect. The prime rib was exactly right, the potatoes golden and crispy, the rice fluffy. She had personally verified with the chef that everything was impeccable. "Enjoy your meal," she said with her professional voice, the same one she used with all customers. Marcus cut a piece of meat without even looking at her, brought it to his mouth, chewed, and immediately made an exaggerated face of disapproval. He pushed the plate forward as if he had been served rotten food. "It's dry," he declared, finally looking at her with cold, accusing eyes. "I asked for well done, not burnt. Is it that hard to understand a simple order?" Clara looked at the dish carefully. The meat was perfect, juicy inside, seared outside, with that golden tone that indicated it was exactly right, exactly as a well-done prime rib should be. Any professional chef would be proud of that dish. "Would you like me to ask the chef to prepare another?" she asked, keeping her voice calm, without letting the irritation that was starting to boil inside her show. "I don't have time to wait again." Marcus cut another piece with abrupt movements, chewed with a grimace, and continued. "But next time, pay more attention to what I ask for. It's not that complicated for someone in your position, is it?" The condescending tone in his words was unmistakable, as if he were talking to someone with limited capacity. "Yes, sir." Marcus looked up at her slowly. His eyes scanned her up and down with that evaluating look he had used the first time, as if he were trying to solve a riddle that didn't really interest him. but entertained him momentarily. "Have you always been so dull?" he asked, tilting his head slightly to one side. "Or just with me, because I've known many servers, and usually they have more personality." Clara felt something tighten in her chest. The words hit harder than she expected. Dull, like a light that doesn't shine enough, like someone not worth noticing. But she maintained a completely neutral face, not letting a single emotion escape her expression. "I don't understand the question, sir." Marcus made a dismissive gesture with his hand, like swatting an annoying fly buzzing around him. "Forget it, it doesn't matter. Just go and bring me more water, and make sure it's really cold this time." Clara nodded slightly and turned to walk away. Her steps were measured, controlled, professional. But then, she heard his voice again, in French, louder than before, with that tone of superiority that only comes from someone who believes they are completely safe from being understood. "Les gens comme elle accomplissent jamais rien dans la vie," he said, cutting another piece of meat with deliberate movements. "Ils restent piégés au même endroit, pour toujours, sans ambition, sans rêve, juste de la médiocrité. C'est presque triste quand on y pense. People like her never achieve anything in life. They stay trapped in the same place forever, without ambition, without dreams, just mediocrity. It's almost sad when you think about it." Clara stopped dead in her tracks. Her feet were rooted to the floor as if they had grown roots. The words pierced her like sharp knives, precise, designed to wound in the exact spot where it hurt the most. Not because of the cruelty itself, but because of the terrifying accuracy with which they touched her deepest fears. Because part of her, the part that woke up at 3 inches the morning with a racing heart and anxiety clutching her chest, feared that it might be true, that she really would stay trapped there, serving tables until her feet could no longer support her, until her back gave out, until she became an invisible shadow to the world, someone people looked at without really seeing. But there was another part of her, the part that had studied until her eyes burned and the letters danced on the phone screen. The part that had memorized thousands of words in 7 different languages, without the help of teachers, without the help of expensive academies, without the help of anyone but her own brutal determination. The part that had transformed every free moment into a learning opportunity, every tourist into an involuntary teacher, every mistake into a lesson etched in her memory. That part knew with absolute certainty that Marcus Thorne was completely wrong, and that part was about to speak. Clara turned around slowly, very slowly. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. She walked back toward the table with measured steps, aware that all the decisions of the last 4 years of her life had led her exactly to this moment. She stopped right next to Marcus, to his right, close enough so that he had to look up to see her, and she waited. He perceived her presence and looked up with evident irritation on his face. His eyebrows furrowed. "What do you want now? Didn't I tell you to bring water?" Clara held her notepad with both hands, gripping it slightly. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with air, feeling her heart beating strongly but steadily. It wasn't nervousness, it was anticipation. It was the moment when everything she had built alone, in silence, without recognition, was finally going to come to light. And then, with the perfect pronunciation, she had practiced hundreds, thousands of times in front of her small bathroom mirror, with patient tourists in the hotel lobby, with YouTube videos playing over and over until dawn, with the crystalline clarity of someone who completely masters the language and doesn't just muddle through. She said in French, "La viande est préparée exactement comme vous l'avez commandé, monsieur. Bien cuite comme vous l'avez demandé. La qualité est excellente. The meat is prepared exactly as you ordered it, sir. Well done, as you requested. The quality is excellent." Marcus's fork stopped in the air, suspended in a moment, frozen in time. His mouth opened slightly. He blinked once, twice, 3 times. His brain was clearly trying to process what he had just heard, as if the words had been spoken in an alien language that shouldn't exist in this context, in this place, coming from the mouth of this person. The noise of the restaurant continued around them, plates clanging in the kitchen, conversations at the other tables, the sound of the espresso machine. But at that table, in that small space between Clara and Marcus, the silence was absolute, dense, charged with electricity. "What? What did you say?" he asked in English. His voice had lost all its previous arrogance. It sounded almost incredulous, as if he couldn't trust his own ears. Clara repeated, still in French, without rush, without anger, without triumphalism, only with absolute clarity and a calm that contrasted dramatically with the look of shock on Marcus's face. "Le bœuf est parfaitement préparé, bien cuit, exactement comme vous l'avez demandé. Il n'y a aucune erreur. The meat is perfectly prepared, well done, exactly as you ordered it. There is no error. Marcus dropped his fork. The sound of the metal hitting the porcelain plate resonated louder than normal, echoing in the tense silence that had formed around them. He leaned back slowly in his chair, pulling away from her as if he needed physical distance to process what was happening. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Genuine surprise, profound confusion, disbelief, and then something akin to discomfort, mixed with a hint of what might be shame, although he was clearly struggling against admitting that last feeling. The nearby tables had begun to notice that something unusual was happening. Conversations gradually faded. Glances were directed toward them with barely concealed curiosity. David, from the counter, had stopped organizing the orders and was watching the scene with wide eyes, completely immobile. You speak French?" Marcus asked in English. His voice had completely lost its authoritative and condescending tone. It now sounded almost vulnerable. "Yes," Clara replied simply in English. "Since when? Who taught you?" "Since I taught myself." There was a long, heavy pause. Marcus was staring at her, and Clara could perfectly see the pieces fitting together in his mind like a macabre puzzle. The memories of all the comments he had made in French, every sneer, every insult, every cruel word he had uttered, assuming her linguistic invisibility. All those words now took on a different weight, a retrospective shame that accumulated on his shoulders. Then he laughed. A short, harsh laugh, without genuine humor, charged with tension and something that might be incredulity, mixed with grudging respect. So you understood everything I said the other days? Everything? Every word?" "Confirmed," Clara said, without taking her eyes off his. "Every comment, every insult, every sneer, everything." Marcus's face turned intense red, but it was not the red of shame one would expect from someone who has just been discovered in their pettiness. It was the red of rage, of indignation from someone who feels deceived, exposed, vulnerable. His hands clenched into fists on the table, the knuckles whitening from the pressure. "And why the hell didn't you say anything before?" His voice rose in volume, attracting even more glances from the surrounding tables. "Why did you let me talk like that if you understood everything?" Clara maintained her firm gaze, without blinking, without backing down a millimeter before the anger that emanated from him like heat waves. "Because you never asked," she replied, with a calm that contrasted dramatically with his agitation. "You simply assumed. You assumed I was ignorant. You assumed I wouldn't understand. You assumed you could say whatever you wanted without consequences. That was your choice, not mine." Silence fell on the table again like a heavy blanket. But this time it was different. It was not the silence of initial shock. It was tense, charged, dangerous, the kind of silence that precedes storms. Some nearby tables had completely abandoned the pretense of not listening. Conversations had completely stopped. Glances were directed openly toward them. Even the servers had stopped their tasks, watching from afar with expressions that mixed curiosity and something akin to astonishment. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His posture was aggressive, challenging. When he spoke again, it was in French, and his voice had a tone of open defiance, as if he were testing whether she could really sustain a complete conversation or if she had only memorized a few phrases. "Intéressant. Alors, la serveuse a des astuces cachées. Combien de phrases pouvez-vous vraiment dire? Ou n'avez-vous mémorisé que quelques phrases pour m'impressionner? Interesting. So the server has hidden tricks. How many sentences can you really say? Or did you just memorize a few phrases to impress me?" Clara responded without the slightest hesitation, also in French, with a fluency that made it clear she was not reciting rehearsed lines, but actively thinking in the language. "Ce ne sont pas des astuces, Monsieur Thorne. Ce sont des compétences que j'ai développées pendant 4 ans. J'ai étudié tous les jours, parlé avec des centaines de personnes, fait des erreurs et appris d'elles. Ce que vous appelez des astuces est le résultat de la discipline et du travail acharné. Those are not tricks, Mr. Thorne. Those are skills I developed over 4 years. I studied every day, spoke with hundreds of people, made mistakes, and learned from them. What you call tricks is the result of discipline and hard work." Marcus's jaw visibly tightened. He stared at her for several seconds that seemed to stretch eternally. Then he laughed again. But this time the sound was different. There was still incredulity, but there was also something else, something that might be respect, although he was clearly struggling against admitting it openly. "Skills," he repeated the word slowly, savoring it. "How many languages do you speak then? 2? 3? 4, at most." Clara looked him directly in the eyes. This was the moment. The moment she had worked toward for years without knowing it would come. The moment when all her effort, all her sacrifice, all those sleepless nights studying while others slept, would finally have a visible purpose. 7 languages fluently, she said in English, letting each word fall like a stone in calm water. And basic conversational level in an 8th. The laughter died completely in Marcus's throat. His expression changed again. Now it was pure incredulity, mixed with something that dangerously resembled astonishment. He stared at her, his brain visibly trying to process this information that did not fit any of the assumptions he had made about her. At the next table, a couple had completely stopped eating and were watching the scene with their mouths slightly open. David, from the counter, was holding a tray in the air, completely paralyzed, like a statue. Sarah, her co-worker server, had approached and was watching with huge eyes. The entire restaurant seemed to have entered a kind of collective trance. Everyone present was aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. 7 languages, Marcus repeated, as if he needed to hear it again for his brain to start accepting the reality. 7 fluently, Clara confirmed. 8 if we count basic Mandarin, but I prefer to be honest about my limitations in that last one. What are the 7? The question came out almost as a whisper. All the previous arrogance had disappeared from his voice. English is my mother tongue, then French, German, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Japanese. As I mentioned, I can also maintain basic conversations in Mandarin Chinese, but I don't consider myself fluent in that language. I still make too many grammatical errors, and my vocabulary is limited to everyday situations. Marcus remained silent for what seemed like several minutes, but was probably only seconds. He took his glass of water with a hand that trembled slightly, drank slowly, as if he needed time to think, and put it back on the table with exaggerated care. His eyes never left her, studying her as if he were seeing her for the first time as a real, complete, valuable person, and not as a restaurant accessory. "You're lying," he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. It was more a desperate hope than a real accusation. "I'm not lying, Mr. Thorne, but I understand your skepticism. It's an uncommon claim for someone in my current position. Prove it then." The challenge returned to his voice, but now it was mixed with genuine curiosity. "If you really speak all those languages, prove it right now." Clara could have been offended by the challenge. She could have felt that she was being tested like a circus performer doing tricks for the public's amusement. She could have turned on her heel and left him sitting there with his incredulity and his wounded arrogance. It would have been completely justifiable. But she knew this was the moment. Not just a moment, but the moment. The opportunity to prove once and for all that she was much more than he had imagined, much more than anyone in that restaurant imagined, much more than even she herself had allowed herself to believe during the last 6 months of serving tables and hiding her light under tons of insecurity and adverse circumstances. "How would you like me to prove it?" she asked, still in French, maintaining her professional voice, but now with a touch of her own defiance. Marcus took his cell phone with quick, almost frantic movements. His fingers flew across the screen as he typed something. He turned the device toward her. A phrase in French shone on the screen. "La persévérance est la clé du succès, même dans les moments les plus sombres." "Read it," he ordered, although his tone had lost the authoritative edge and sounded more like a plea disguised as a command. Out loud and translated. Clara read without the slightest hesitation with the Parisian accent she had perfected listening to countless French tourists. "La persévérance est la clé du succès, même dans les moments les plus sombres." Then she added in English, "Perseverance is the key to success, even in the darkest moments." Marcus blinked. His fingers returned to the screen. This time he wrote something in Italian. "Il coraggio non è l'assenza di paura, ma la forza di andare avanti nonostante essa." Clara read it immediately with the characteristic musicality of Italian. "Il coraggio non è l'assenza di paura, ma la forza di andare avanti nonostante essa." Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to move forward in spite of it. Marcus's hands were visibly trembling now as he typed the next phrase, Japanese this time. "Yuki to wa tamashi no tsuyosa de ari, gyakkyo ni tachimukau chikara desu. Yuki to wa tamashi no tsuyosa de ari, gyaki enai, tachimukau chikara desu." Clara pronounced it with the tonal precision that Japanese required. "Yuki to wa tamashi no tsuyosa de ari, gyakyo ni tachimukau chikara desu." Courage is the strength of the soul and the power to face adversity. He tried Portuguese. "A verdadeira força está em nunca desistir dos seus sonhos." "A verdadeira força está em nunca desistir dos seus sonhos," Clara had. True strength lies in never giving up on your dreams. With each language Clara effortlessly mastered, Marcus's face transformed. Arrogance melted like wax under fire. Incredulity gave way to astonishment, and slowly, very slowly, something akin to respect began to appear in his eyes. He finally put the phone down on the table with a soft thud. He leaned back in his chair completely, as if all his energy had abandoned him. He stared at Clara with a complex expression that mixed admiration, embarrassment, and something that might be remorse, although he was clearly not accustomed to feeling that particular emotion. The restaurant had become completely silent. Not even the sounds of the kitchen could be heard. It was as if everyone present was collectively holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next in this unexpected drama. "My God," Marcus finally murmured in English, running a hand through his perfectly groomed hair, messing it up for the first time. "It's true. It's all true." Clara said nothing, simply waited, maintaining her professional posture, her serene face, although inside, her heart was beating like a war drum. "How?" Marcus began, then stopped, searching for the right words. "How is it possible that a server speaks 7 languages? It doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense." And there was the question Clara had been waiting for. The question that would give her the opportunity to tell her story, to show him who she really was, to make him understand the magnitude of the mistake he had made in judging her. "I wasn't a server before, Mr. Thorne," Clara said, her voice firm, but charged with contained emotion. "I worked at the Royal York as a receptionist. I was there for 4 years. I learned these languages because I needed to do my job. I studied in every free moment, on my breaks, after work, on weekends. I learned from guests, from apps, from videos, from any resource I could find. And I'm here serving tables because I need to be, because the hotel closed, and because the jobs that require what I know also require university degrees that I don't have. Because life sometimes puts you in places you didn't choose, but that doesn't define who you are or what you can do." The silence that followed her words was deafening. Marcus looked at her as if he were seeing her for the first time, as a complete, complex, valuable human being. "You are completely wasted here," he finally said. His voice was barely a whisper, and in that moment, Clara knew that her life was about to change forever. Marcus sat in silence for several seconds that seemed to stretch into hours. Clara could see his mind working, processing, recalculating everything he had assumed about her. He finally picked up his napkin, wiped his mouth with slow, deliberate movements, and stood up. The entire restaurant was still watching. No one was pretending not to pay attention anymore. It was as if everyone present was watching a movie and had reached the crucial moment where everything could change. Marcus took his leather wallet from the inner pocket of his jacket. He opened it and pulled out several bills, much more than necessary to pay the bill. He left them on the table carefully, as if he were depositing something sacred. For the first time since he had started frequenting the restaurant, he left a tip. And it was not just any tip. It was generous, excessively generous. "Clara," he said, using her name for the first time. She felt a chill when she heard it. Until that moment, to him, she had been Miss, or simply an empty space that brought food. "That's your name, isn't it?" She nodded, discreetly pointing to the name tag she had worn on her chest since day one. "Yes, Mr. Thorne. Call me Marcus," he corrected. "I think after what just happened, formalities are a bit ridiculous, don't you think?" Clara did not answer. She wasn't sure she wanted that familiarity with someone who had been humiliating her just minutes earlier in a language he thought she didn't understand. Marcus put away his wallet, picked up his briefcase and documents from the table, smoothed his jacket with one hand, a nervous gesture Clara noticed. He, the man who had entered the restaurant with all the confidence in the world, now seemed uneasy, unsure of how to proceed. "You should be looking for a better job," he finally said, looking directly into her eyes. "Someone with your talent, with your skills, shouldn't be serving tables. It's a waste. A criminal waste." The words were kind, but Clara felt a pang of irritation. It was easy for him to say that. Easy for someone who had clearly never had to worry about paying the rent or deciding between buying food or paying the electricity bill. Easy for someone who didn't know what it was like to send hundreds of resumes and receive only silence or polite rejections. "Believe me, Mr. Marcus," she corrected herself. "If there was a better job available, I'd already have it. I'm not here by choice. I'm here out of necessity." Marcus nodded slowly, as if he was finally beginning to understand something fundamental about the world he had been ignoring all his life. "I know. And I have something to propose to you." Clara felt her heart accelerate. "A proposal? But not here," Marcus continued, looking around the restaurant, where dozens of eyes were still watching them. "Not with all this audience. I'm going to come back tomorrow, same time. And when I do, I want to talk to you calmly, Without spectators, without pressure, just a conversation between two people. Does that sound good to you? Clara didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to ask him right there what it was about. Another part, the cautious part that had learned not to trust too quickly, told her to wait, to listen, not to get too excited too soon. What is it about? She finally asked. Marcus smiled. It wasn't the arrogant smile from before. It was something more genuine, more human. Tomorrow, I promise you, but I think it might be something that interests you, something that could use those incredible skills you've been hiding here. With that said, he walked toward the exit, but when he reached the door he stopped, turned slightly, and looked at her over his shoulder. And Clara, I'm sorry for what I said, everything I said. I have no excuse. I was an arrogant jerk who made stupid assumptions. I am genuinely sorry. And he left the restaurant, leaving Clara standing next to the empty table, holding the bills in her trembling hand, feeling her heart beat so hard she could hear it in her ears. The restaurant immediately erupted in murmurs. The conversations that had been suspended resumed with renewed intensity, but now everyone was talking about one thing, what they had just witnessed. David practically ran toward her, his eyes bright with excitement. My God, Clara, what just happened? You speak 7 languages? 7? His voice rose in volume with every word. And that guy is going to offer you a job? How did you never tell me you spoke so many languages? Sarah appeared on the other side, equally excited. That was incredible. You left him completely speechless. You should have seen his face when you started speaking French. I thought he was going to faint. Clara looked at the bills in her hand. They were enough to pay her overdue bills, enough to buy decent food, enough to breathe a little easier for at least a couple of weeks. I don't know, David, she answered honestly. I don't know what just happened. I don't know if he's really going to come back tomorrow or if this was just, I don't know what it was. He's coming back, David said with conviction. I saw how he looked at you when he left. That man is coming back, and I think your life is about to change, Clara. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Clara mechanically served tables, her mind completely elsewhere. The other customers looked at her with new curiosity. Some even asked her questions about the languages she spoke. Others simply watched her with barely concealed admiration. When she finally finished her shift and changed in the small staff locker room, Clara sat on the bench and let out a long, deep sigh that she had been holding for hours. What had she done? Had she made the right decision in revealing her abilities to Marcus, or had she just made a monumental mistake? Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out and saw a message from an unknown number. Clara, it's Marcus Thorne. David gave me your number. I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to confirm that I will be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please give this conversation a chance. I believe we both have a lot to gain. And again, my apologies for my behavior. There is no excuse for how I treated you, MT. Clara read the message 3 times, then 4. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, not knowing what to reply. She finally typed, Okay, I'll be there. See you tomorrow. She sent the message before she could regret it. That night, Clara couldn't sleep for a minute. She lay awake in her bed, looking at the damp-stained ceiling of her small apartment, her mind racing at 1,000 kilometers per hour. What could Marcus Thorne want? Could this proposal be real, or was he just playing with her? What if it was a trap of some kind? What if he just wanted to humiliate her in a different way? But then she remembered the expression on his face when she had demonstrated her abilities. It had not been mockery. It had been genuine astonishment, and that apology at the end had sounded sincere. She got out of bed at 5 inches the morning, unable to stay lying down. She made herself a watery coffee with the little she had left. She sat by the window and watched the city slowly wake up under the still dark sky. Lights began to turn on in nearby buildings, people going to work, people living their normal lives, people who had no idea that in that small apartment, a woman was about to make a decision that could change everything. Clara thought about her mother, who had died 5 years ago, without getting to see everything her daughter had achieved. She thought about her father, who had disappeared from their lives when she was 10. She thought about all the moments when she had wanted to give up, when learning a new language seemed impossible, when the words were mixed up in her head and she wanted to throw the phone against the wall, but she hadn't given up. She had never given up, and she wasn't going to start now. She took her phone and opened her French application. The screen still showed a completed streak of 347 days, C1 level. She smiled slightly. Maybe all that effort would finally have a greater purpose. The day passed in a state of controlled anxiety. She showered. She dressed more carefully than usual. She chose her best uniform, the one that had no visible stains or wear. She styled her hair with special attention, making sure every strand was in place. She arrived at the restaurant an hour before her shift. David greeted her with a huge smile. "Ready for your big moment?" "I don't know if I'm ready," Clara admitted. "I don't even know what to expect. Just listen to him. Listen to what he has to say, and then you decide." "But Clara, don't let fear make you say no before you even know what he's offering you." She nodded, appreciating the advice, although her stomach was still tied in knots. 2 inches the afternoon arrived with agonizing slowness. Clara had been watching the door like a hawk, her heart jumping every time it opened, only to be disappointed when anyone else walked in. And then, exactly at 2 o'clock, Marcus Thorne walked through the door, but this time he was different. He wasn't talking on the phone. He wasn't gesticulating arrogantly. He wasn't walking like he owned the place. He walked with a measured, almost humble step. He was wearing the same type of expensive suit, but something about his body language was completely different. His eyes immediately searched for Clara. When he found her, he smiled. It wasn't the condescending smile from before. It was warm, genuine, almost nervous. He walked directly toward her. "Hello, Clara. Thank you for giving me this opportunity." "Hello, Marcus," she replied, her voice firmer than she felt. "You said you had a proposal." "Yes. Can we sit down?" He pointed to a table in the corner, away from the main noise of the restaurant. "This will take a little time, and I want you to understand exactly what it's about." Clara looked at David, who nodded, giving her permission. They went to the corner table and sat down across from each other. Marcus placed his briefcase on the table, opened it, and took out a folder, but before opening it, he left it aside and looked directly at Clara. "Before we talk business, I need to say something," he began. "Yesterday I left here completely embarrassed, not just for being discovered speaking ill of you, but for realizing how blind I had been. I made assumptions based on nothing but prejudice and arrogance. I judged you by your current job without considering who you really were or what you had achieved. And that says more about my own shortcomings as a person than about you." Clara listened in silence. The words sounded sincere, but there was still a part of her that remained cautious. "I appreciate the apology," she finally said. "But you didn't come here just to apologize again, did you?" Marcus smiled slightly. "No, you're right. I came here because I think I can offer you something, and frankly, because I think you can offer me something I desperately need." He opened the folder and pulled out some documents. "I have an international consulting firm, Thorne & Associates. We work with clients all over the world, Europe, Asia, America. We help companies expand into new markets, establish operations in different countries, and navigate the complexities of doing business globally." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "The problem is that my executive assistant, the person who handled all my international communications, all my translations, all my coordination with foreign clients, resigned 3 weeks ago. She went to work for the competition. She left me in a terrible position. I have meetings scheduled with Japanese, German, and French clients. I have contracts that need to be translated. I have calls that need real-time interpretation. And until yesterday, I had absolutely no idea how I was going to solve this problem." He looked at Clara with an intensity that made her feel both uncomfortable and intrigued. "And then I walked into this restaurant a week ago and found exactly what I needed, only I was too stupid and arrogant to realize it until you showed me in the most impactful way possible." Clara felt her heart accelerate. "What exactly are you proposing?" Marcus leaned forward. "I want to offer you the position of executive assistant in my firm. Starting salary 3 times what you earn here. Full benefits, your own office, and most importantly, the opportunity to use every one of those languages you've worked so hard to learn." Clara was breathless. She literally felt the air leave her lungs. 3 times? She could barely form the words. 3 times your current salary, Marcus confirmed. Plus performance-based bonuses. "But I need to be honest with you, Clara. It's not an easy job. The hours can be long. The clients can be demanding. There will be occasional travel. There will be pressure. There will be moments when you wonder if it's worth it." He paused meaningfully. "But there will also be growth, learning, opportunities. And finally, you'll be doing something that truly leverages everything you are capable of." Clara remained silent for several seconds, her mind racing at impossible speeds. 3 times her salary. That meant being able to pay her debts, being able to breathe, being able to live instead of just surviving. "Why me?" she finally asked. "You could hire someone with a university degree? Someone with formal corporate experience? Why a server without any of those credentials?" Marcus smiled. "Because yesterday, I saw something that no university degree can teach. I saw someone who had the discipline to learn 7 languages on her own. I saw someone who maintained her composure and professionalism even when she was being actively humiliated. I saw someone with an inner strength that cannot be learned in any business school. And honestly, Clara, after working with dozens of assistants with impressive degrees and extensive experience, I can tell you that none of those things guarantee that someone is good at the job. He leaned back in his chair. But there is one condition, one requirement, before this is official. Clara felt her stomach clench. What is it? I need to see you in action. A real test. I have a crucial meeting with a Japanese client scheduled for this Friday. It's an important contract. If I lose it, my company is in serious trouble. I need you to come to that meeting. Take notes on everything that is discussed. Help me communicate effectively, and afterwards provide me with a complete report of everything that was agreed upon. His eyes locked onto hers. If you can do that, if you can prove that you can really handle the pressure of a real high-level business meeting, then the job is yours. Contract signed that same day. What do you say? Clara felt thousands of emotions struggling inside her. Fear, excitement, doubt, hope. It was too good to be true. There had to be a trick, a trap, something. What if I fail the test? She asked quietly. Then nothing happens, Marcus replied. I thank you for your time. I pay you for the hours you spend preparing and attending the meeting. And we both continue with our lives. No hard feelings. No negative consequences. It sounded too good, too perfect. But Clara thought about her 6 months of serving tables. She thought about the bills she couldn't pay. She thought about all those languages she had learned that were rusting in her brain due to lack of use. She thought about the Royal York and how she had loved that job before it closed. And she thought about the words Marcus had said in French just the day before. People like her never achieve anything in life. She looked up and looked him directly in the eyes. I accept. The 3 days separating Clara from the meeting with the Japanese clients were the most intense of her life. Marcus had emailed her all the material she needed to study, information about the Japanese company, technical terms of the industry, the context of the contract they were negotiating, even recordings of previous conversations, so she could familiarize herself with the specific accents of the executives. Clara did not sleep more than 4 hours each night. After finishing her shifts at the restaurant because she couldn't afford to quit until she had something secure, she would arrive at her apartment and study until the letters danced before her eyes. She reviewed technical vocabulary in Japanese, practiced business phrases, memorized the names of the executives and their positions in the company. David had been incredibly understanding. He had given her the shortest shifts, the easiest tables, anything to give her more time to prepare. This is your chance, he had told her. Don't waste it worrying about this place. We'll be fine without you. On Thursday night, Clara was so nervous that she could barely hold her coffee cup in her hands without it shaking. She had tried on her only formal suit 5 times, bought second-hand years ago for job interviews that had never amounted to anything. It was a little tight, a little worn at the elbows, but it was the best she had. Her phone rang. It was a message from Marcus. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Thorne & Associates offices. Address, 4567 Libertador Avenue, 12th floor. Clients will arrive at 10:30. I'm sending you money for a taxi. I don't want you to arrive stressed by public transportation. I trust you. Empty. A few seconds later, a bank transfer notification arrived. Enough for the taxi and a little extra. Clara felt something tighten in her throat. No one had trusted her like that in a long time. She wrote back, "Thank you. I will be there." Friday dawned with a gray sky that threatened rain. Clara woke up at 6 inches the morning after barely 2 hours of restless sleep. She showered with almost cold water because the building's heater had decided to stop working precisely that day. She dressed carefully, checking every detail 3 times. She put on light makeup, just enough to look professional, but not too much. She tied her hair in an elegant bun. At 9:15 she called a taxi. The driver was an older man who tried to make conversation, but Clara could barely answer in monosyllables. Her mind was completely focused on what was to come. The Thorne & Associates building was impressive, glass and steel, modern, intimidating. Clara paid the taxi with trembling hands and entered the lobby. The security guard directed her to the elevators after checking her name on a list. 12th floor. The doors opened, revealing an elegant reception area. Marble floors, designer furniture, panoramic views of the city. A young, perfectly groomed receptionist greeted her with a professional smile. "Clara Dubois." "Yes, mister. Thorne is waiting for you this way, please." She led her down a hallway with offices on both sides, employees working on computers, talking on the phone in different languages. Clara caught fragments of Spanish, German, and Italian. It was exactly the kind of environment she had dreamed of working in. The receptionist stopped in front of a frosted glass door with the name Marcus Thorne, CEO, elegantly engraved on it. She knocked softly and opened the door. "Mr. Thorne, Miss Dubois has arrived." Marcus was standing next to a large conference table, organizing documents. When he looked up, he smiled with genuine warmth. "Clara, excellent. You're early. That's good." He was wearing an impeccable dark gray suit, white shirt, navy blue tie. He looked exactly like what he was, a successful businessman in his element. But something in his expression was different than when she had met him at the restaurant. There was less arrogance, more humanity. "Thank you for the opportunity," Clara said, trying to keep her voice firm. "Thank you for accepting with so little preparation time," Marcus replied, approaching her. "How do you feel?" "Nervous," she admitted honestly, "but prepared." Marcus nodded appreciatively. "Honesty's good, much better than false confidence. Come, I'll show you where you'll be sitting." He guided her to the conference table. It was made of dark, polished wood, surrounded by leather chairs. There was a closed laptop on one of the seats. "This will be your place," Marcus explained, pointing to the chair on his right. "The Japanese executives will sit across from us. There are 3. Mr. Takahashi, who is the CEO, Miss Yamamoto, Director of Operations, and Mr. Sato, who is their legal advisor. I already sent you their photos and profiles by email." Clara nodded. She had memorized them. "Your job is relatively simple in theory, but requires absolute concentration in practice," Marcus continued. "I need you to take notes on everything that is discussed. Every detail, every number, every condition they mention. I also need you to help me when there are communication barriers. My Japanese is basic, enough for greetings and courtesies, but not for complex technical negotiations." He paused, looking at her seriously. "And most importantly, after the meeting I need a complete report in English. Clear, concise, omitting nothing relevant. That report will be the basis for the decisions I make about this contract. Do you understand the responsibility?" "I understand it," Clara replied, feeling the weight of his words. "Good. Now, do you have any questions before they arrive?" Clara thought for a moment. "What is the main point of conflict in this negotiation? What worries you the most?" Marcus seemed impressed by the question. "Smart. The price. They want to reduce the contract cost by 15%. I need to keep it at a maximum of a 10% reduction for the project to remain profitable. There are also concerns about delivery deadlines. They want 6 months. I need 8. Those are the 2 critical points." Clara nodded, memorizing the information. The office phone rang. Marcus answered, "Yes, perfect. Thank you. Send them up." He hung up and looked at Clara. "They're here. They're at reception. Take a deep breath. You can do this." Clara closed her eyes for a second, inhaled deeply, and exhaled slowly. When she opened them again, her expression was one of professional calm. She was ready. The door opened, and the receptionist introduced the 3 Japanese executives. Mr. Takahashi entered first. He was a man of about 60, completely gray hair, metal-rimmed glasses, impeccable black suit, exuding quiet authority. Behind him came Miss Yamamoto, about 45, in a navy blue skirt suit and a serious but not unpleasant expression. And finally, Mr. Sato, younger, perhaps 35, with a leather briefcase and a laptop under his arm. Marcus stepped forward with a warm smile. "Takahashi-san, Yamamoto-san, Sato-san, welcome. It is an honor to receive you." He performed a slight bow, the appropriate gesture of respect in Japanese culture. The executives returned the bow with precision calibrated according to their respective hierarchical positions. Then Marcus pointed to Clara. "Allow me to introduce Miss Clara Dubois, my executive assistant. She will be supporting us during today's meeting." The 3 executives turned toward Clara. She bowed in a perfectly executed manner, not too deep, which would have been excessive for her position, but respectful enough. "Hajimemashite. Watashi wa Clara Dubois desu. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu," she said in perfect Japanese. "It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Clara Dubois. Please be kind to me." The 3 executives blinked in surprise. Mr. Takahashi smiled slightly, the first trace of warmth in his expression. "Nihongo ga jouzu desu ne," he replied. "You speak Japanese very well." "Arigatou gozaimasu." Clara responded modestly. "Mada mada benkyū chū desu." "Thank you, I am still studying." The humble, culturally appropriate response seemed to earn even more approval. Miss Yamamoto exchanged a look with Mr. Takahashi, clearly impressed. Marcus watched the scene with an expression of barely contained relief. He had not expected Clara to master even the cultural subtleties of the Japanese interaction. Please take a seat, Marcus invited in English, pointing to the chairs across the table. Would you like tea or coffee before we begin? Ocha ga onegai shimasu, Mr. Takahashi said. If you have tea, please. Marcus looked at Clara slightly lost. She immediately stood up. Of course. Green tea is fine? She asked in Japanese. Hi, sorde keko. Takahashi nodded. Yes, that is fine. Clara quickly left and returned 2 minutes later with a tray prepared by the receptionist. Green tea for the 3 Japanese executives, coffee for Marcus. She served it carefully, using both hands when handing each cup, another appropriate cultural detail. Once everyone was settled, the meeting formally began. Mr. Takahashi opened with introductory remarks in Japanese, speaking about the importance of the relationship between the 2 companies and his hope of reaching a mutually beneficial agreement. Clara took quick notes on her laptop, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Marcus watched, trying to catch what he could, but clearly missing details. Then, Miss Yamamoto began to talk about the specific terms of the contract. She spoke quickly, using complex technical terminology. Clara saw Marcus tense up slightly. Excuse me, Clara interrupted politely in Japanese. Could you speak a little slower in the technical sections? I want to make sure I capture all the details correctly for Mr. Thorne. Miss Yamamoto nodded understandingly and reduced her speed. She continued explaining her company's concerns about the deadlines. After about 5 minutes, Clara turned to Marcus and summarized in English in a low voice. They are concerned about the delivery deadlines. They believe 8 months is too long given the pace of the current market. They need the product ready in 6 months maximum to coordinate with their own launch in Japan. If it can't be in 6 months, they would have to look for another supplier. Marcus nodded, processing the information. He responded in English, addressing the executives. I understand the concern about the timing. May I explain why we need 8 months? Clara translated to Japanese. The executives nodded, indicating for him to continue. The meeting continued like this for almost 2 hours, a complex negotiation dance where Clara served as a bridge, not only linguistic, but cultural, between both parties. She translated not only the words, but the intentions behind them. She softened expressions that could sound too direct or confrontational. She clarified misunderstandings before they became problems. There was a particularly tense moment when Mr. Sato, the legal advisor, raised objections about a specific clause in the contract. He spoke quickly, with evident frustration in his tone. Marcus didn't understand anything and looked at Clara with concern. She listened carefully until Sato finished, then turned to Marcus. He has problems with the penalty clause for delays. He says the terms are too severe for their company and they need to be renegotiated. Specifically, he mentions that a 5% penalty for each week of delay could ruin them if any unexpected problem arises. He is asking for it to be reduced to 2% and for there to be a 2-week grace period. Marcus thought carefully, asked them if they would be willing to accept 3% with a 1-week grace period. Clara translated the counteroffer to Japanese. The 3 executives looked at each other, had a brief quiet consultation, and finally Mr. Takahashi nodded. Sore o ukeire raremasu, he said. That is acceptable. And so it continued, point by point, objection by objection, compromise by compromise. Clara never lost the thread, never got confused, never let anything important get lost in translation. Finally, after 2.5 hours, Mr. Takahashi leaned back in his chair and smiled. I think we have reached an agreement that works for both sides. Everyone in the room visibly relaxed. When the Japanese executives left, Marcus closed the office door and sank into his chair with a deep sigh. My God, Clara, that was incredible. Clara was still sitting in front of her laptop, reviewing her notes. Her heart was still beating fast from the adrenaline of the meeting. Really? She asked, not daring to believe it completely. I didn't make any mistakes? Marcus laughed, running his hands through his hair. Mistake? Clara, you just saved a $2 million contract. You didn't just translate. You mediated. You smoothed out tensions that I didn't even notice. And that cultural detail with the tea and the bows? Takahashi was impressed from the first minute. He stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the city. I've worked with professional translators who charge fortunes, and none of them did what you did today. None of them understood the emotional context behind the words. None of them anticipated problems before they exploded. Clara felt something warm expanding in her chest. Pride, recognition, validation. I still need to write the report, she said, turning her attention back to the laptop. Take your time. Use this office as long as you need. I have to make some calls, but I'll be around. Marcus left, leaving her alone. Clara took a deep breath and started writing. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, transcribing everything she had captured. Every number, every condition, every concern expressed by both parties. 2 hours later, she had an 8-page document. Clear, organized, complete. She reviewed it 3 times before emailing it to Marcus. Her phone vibrated immediately. It was a message from him. Come to my office, please. Clara got up, smoothed her skirt, and walked down the hallway. She knocked on the door. Come in. She entered. Marcus was sitting behind his desk, reading the report on his computer. When he saw her, he pointed to the chair across from him. Sit down. She obeyed, feeling suddenly nervous. His expression was serious. Impossible to read. Marcus finished reading, closed the laptop, and looked directly at her. This report is perfect, absolutely perfect. You captured things that I didn't even notice during the meeting. You included context, nuances, even the executive's facial expressions when we discussed certain points. He paused. Clara, you passed the test with flying colors. The job is yours if you still want it. Clara's heart stopped. Then it started beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. Are you serious? Completely serious. Marcus opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a thick folder. This is your contract. Salary we discussed, full benefits, paid vacation, performance bonuses. It starts Monday, if you accept. You'll have your own office, your own computer, access to all our systems. He slid the folder toward her. Take the weekend to read it. But Clara, I want to be completely honest with you. This job will not be easy. There will be 12-hour days. There will be difficult clients. There will be stress. But there will also be growth, opportunities, and finally, the recognition you deserve. Clara took the folder with trembling hands, opened it, and saw her name on the first page. Employment contract. Clara Dubois, executive assistant. Tears began to sting her eyes. She blinked quickly, trying to hold them back. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Marcus replied with a smile. Say you're going to take this opportunity and that you're going to show the world what you're capable of. Clara looked at him. This man who a week ago had humiliated her in French, thinking she wouldn't understand. This man who had assumed she was just another server without ambition or dreams, now looked at her with genuine respect, even admiration. There's something I need to tell you first, Clara said in a low voice. Marcus leaned forward. I'm listening. When you walked into the restaurant that first time and spoke in French, it hurt. Not just the words, but what they represented for my whole life. People have underestimated me because of my job, because of my lack of a university degree, because of my appearance, and every time it happens, it hurts a little more. She paused, organizing her thoughts. But it also taught me something. It taught me that I can't wait for others to see my value. I have to show them. I have to stop hiding behind the fear of rejection and start fighting for what I deserve. She looked directly at Marcus. So yes, I accept this job, but not because I need your approval or because I need someone to rescue me. I accept it because it's what I deserve. Because I worked hard for years to get to this moment, and because I'm finally ready to stop being invisible. Marcus smiled widely. That's exactly the attitude I need on my team. Welcome to Thorne & Associates, Clara. He extended his hand. She shook it firmly. Thank you. I won't disappoint you. I know. Clara stood up, put the contract in her bag, and headed for the door. But before leaving, she turned. Marcus, one more thing. Yes. Never underestimate me or anyone else again. The next person you humiliate might have skills you don't even imagine, and you could lose something valuable simply by being arrogant. Marcus nodded slowly. You are absolutely right. It's a lesson I won't forget. Clara left the building and walked down the street with the contract clutched against her chest. The gray morning sky had cleared, and now the sun was shining brightly. The city seemed different, brighter, full of possibilities. She took out her phone and called David. Clara, how did it go? I got the job, David. I got it. On the other side, she heard a shout of joy. I knew it. I knew you'd do it. When do you start? Monday. I need to talk to you about my resignation from the restaurant. Don't worry about that. Consider it handled. Go. Celebrate. You deserve it. Clara hung up and kept walking aimlessly, letting the reality of what had just happened completely wash over her. Her life had changed. In 1 week, everything had changed, and this time, She was the one who had made it happen. 6 months had passed since Clara had first walked through the doors of Thorne & Associates as an employee. 6 months that felt like 6 years of growth, compressed into half a year of absolute intensity. Her office was small, but her own. A window with a view of the city, a wooden desk, a state-of-the-art computer, and a plaque on the door that read, Clara Dubois, Senior Executive Assistant. The title had changed after the 3rd month, when Marcus recognized that her work went far beyond the duties of a regular assistant. She coordinated international meetings, negotiated contracts, managed relationships with clients from 5 different continents. She had traveled to Tokyo twice, Berlin once, and Paris for an important conference. Her apartment no longer had peeling walls or broken furniture. She had paid off all her debts. She had started saving. She had even sent money to her aunt in the country, the only family she had left. But success had not been easy. Marcus had been right about that. There were 14-hour days, nights where she stayed until 11, solving last-minute crises, demanding clients who made her doubt herself, moments where the imposter syndrome whispered in her ear that she didn't deserve to be there. But every time that voice appeared, Clara remembered where she came from. She remembered the restaurant. She remembered the humiliations. She remembered the feeling of being invisible, and she used those memories as fuel to keep going. One Tuesday afternoon, Marcus knocked on her office door. "Got a minute?" "Always," Clara replied, saving the document she was working on. Marcus entered and closed the door behind him. His expression was serious, which immediately put Clara on alert. In 6 months, she had learned to read his expressions. "This wasn't about routine work. I need to talk to you about something important," he began, sitting in the chair across from her desk. "Something that could change your position in the company." Clara's heart accelerated. "What is it?" Marcus took a deep breath. "The firm is growing faster than I anticipated. The contracts you've helped close, the relationships you've built with our international clients were expanding, and I need help managing it all." He paused, searching for the right words. "I want to open a completely new department. Linguistic Services and Cultural Consulting. A department specifically dedicated to helping our clients navigate the complexities of doing business across cultural and linguistic borders." Clara listened intently, not knowing where this was going. "And I want you to lead it," Marcus finally said. "As director of the department, your own team, your own budget, complete autonomy to build it as you see fit." Clara was speechless. She literally couldn't form a coherent response. "Director?" she finally managed to say. "Marcus, I don't even have a university degree." "You don't need one," he replied firmly. "You have something much more valuable. Real experience, proven skills, and the trust of our most important clients. The Japanese specifically requested to work with you on future projects. The Germans were impressed with your handling of their cultural concerns. The French, well, you know how demanding they are, and they adore you." He leaned forward. "Clara, for 6 months I've watched you do things that people with PhDs cannot do. You've demonstrated leadership, emotional intelligence, adaptability. Those are the qualities that define a great director, not a piece of paper from a university." Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes. This time she didn't try to hold them back. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you're going to build this department and turn it into something extraordinary." Clara thought about the entire path she had traveled, from the hotel that closed, leaving her with nothing, to the restaurant where she had served tables while her skills rusted. Up until that day, when Marcus Thorne walked in and humiliated her without knowing she understood every word, everything had led to this moment. "Yes," she finally said, her voice firm despite the tears. "Yes, I accept." Marcus smiled widely. "Excellent. We start building the team next week. You have carte blanche to hire whoever you need." He stood up and walked toward the door, but before leaving, he turned. "One more thing, Clara. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry for not having said it before, but I'm truly proud of what you've achieved, not just here, but in your entire life. The discipline, you had to learn 7 languages on your own, the strength to endure difficult moments without giving up, the dignity with which you handled my horrible behavior. Those things cannot be taught. You either have them, or you don't, and you have them." He left before Clara could respond, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her tears. 3 months later, the Linguistic Services and Cultural Consulting Department was a reality. Clara had hired 5 people, 2 translators, an international relations specialist, a project coordinator, and an administrative assistant. She had established protocols, created systems, and developed training programs. But most importantly, She had changed the philosophy of how the firm interacted with international clients. It was no longer just about translating words. It was about understanding contexts, respecting cultures, and building true bridges between different worlds. The results spoke for themselves. International contracts had increased by 40%. Client satisfaction was at an all-time high, and other companies had begun asking if they could hire Clara's department's services independently. One Friday afternoon, while Clara was reviewing reports for the week, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Clara Dubois. Yes, who is speaking? This is Claire Rousseau from the Royal York Hotel. Clara's heart skipped a beat. The hotel where everything had begun. The hotel? I thought it had closed. It did, but it was bought by an investment group 6 months ago. We reopened last month with new management, and we are looking for a director of international relations. Your former manager gave me your name. He said you were the best employee he ever had. Clara felt a surge of emotions, nostalgia, gratitude, but also something else. The quiet certainty of where she belonged. It's an honor that you thought of me, she replied. But I'm currently very happy where I am. I direct my own department here, and we are building something special. There was a pause on the other end. I understand. Congratulations on your success, Clara. Clearly, you took the right path. When she hung up, Clara leaned back in her chair and smiled. The hotel had been important. It had been where she learned everything, but she no longer needed to go back there. She had built something new, something her own, something better. 2 weeks later, Marcus organized a celebration in the office. 9 months since Clara had started, 6 months since she had opened her department. It was time to celebrate the firm's growth. The conference room was full. The entire team, about 30 employees now, chatted animatedly with glasses in their hands. Marcus called for attention by tapping his glass with a knife. I want to thank you all for your incredible work this year, he began. We have grown in ways I didn't imagine possible, but I want to specifically highlight someone whose contribution has been transformative. He looked directly at Clara. 9 months ago, I met Clara Dubois under circumstances that were not ideal. I made the mistake of judging her by her position at that moment, instead of seeing who she really was. And I almost lost the opportunity to work with one of the most talented people I have ever met. He walked toward where she was standing. Clara not only saved crucial contracts, she not only opened new markets for us, she changed the culture of this firm. She taught us to value talent regardless of where it comes from. She showed us that real skills matter more than paper titles. And personally, she taught me a lesson in humility that I will never forget. He raised his glass. To Clara Dubois, for not giving up when everything seemed impossible, for having the strength to show her worth when others underestimated her, and for building something extraordinary from scratch. Everyone raised their glasses. The applause filled the room. Clara felt tears running down her cheeks, but this time she didn't mind. They were tears of pure happiness, of achievement, of knowing that she was finally exactly where she was supposed to be. That night, Clara walked alone through the city streets. She ended up, almost without realizing it, in front of the restaurant, the Maple Grill. The lights were on. Through the window, she could see the full tables, the servers moving with trays, the normal life of the place continuing as always. David came out to smoke a cigarette and saw her standing there. "Clara!" he yelled with joy, putting out his cigarette and running toward her. "What are you doing here? Coming to visit us finally?" She hugged him. "I was passing by. I wanted to see the place." David looked at her with bright eyes. "We're so proud of you. The whole team talks about you. I tell your story to the new employees. I tell them a server who spoke 7 languages worked here. Now she's a director of her own department at a major firm. It inspires them." Clara felt a lump in her throat. "This place was important to me, David. It kept me afloat when I thought I was sinking." "And you showed us that there are no small jobs, only small people," David replied. "You were the best server we had. Not because you were fast or efficient, but because you never let the job define you. You always knew you were more than this." They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the restaurant. "You know what's ironic?" Clara said finally. "If Marcus Thorne hadn't walked in here being an arrogant jerk that day, I'd probably still be serving tables. His humiliation was the spark I needed to stop hiding." David laughed. "Sometimes the worst people teach us the best lessons." "Yes, but he changed too. He learned not to judge, and that's more than most people achieve." They said goodbye with another hug. Clara continued walking, this time heading to her apartment. Her nice apartment in a safe neighborhood, with new furniture and a beautiful view. When she got home, she made herself some tea and sat by the window. She took out her phone and opened her language applications. The notifications showed streaks of more than 500 days in 3 of them. She had never stopped studying, even after getting the job of her dreams. She opened a new notebook and started writing. She didn't know exactly what. She just knew she needed to capture this moment, this feeling, this truth she had learned. She wrote, "Life doesn't owe you anything, but you owe everything to yourself. You owe yourself the effort, the discipline, the faith in your own abilities, even when no one else believes. You owe yourself getting up every time you fall. You owe yourself not accepting being invisible just because others don't see you. I have learned that external recognition is wonderful, but internal validation is essential. That degrees matter less than real skills. That humility and confidence can coexist. That you can be kind without being weak, strong without being cruel. I also learned that people can change, that the humiliator can become humble, that the one who despises you today can be your greatest ally tomorrow, and that forgiving is not forgetting, but letting go of the weight so you can fly higher. My name is Clara Dubois. A year ago, I was invisible. Today, I lead a team. Tomorrow, I will build something even bigger. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I earned it. Word by word, language by language, tier by tier, victory by victory. And if I could do it, anyone can. You just need to believe that you are more than your current circumstances, that the place you are today does not define the place where you will be tomorrow, and that sometimes the greatest revenge against those who underestimate you is not proving them wrong, but proving to yourself that you were always right about your own worth. She closed the notebook and looked out the window at the city that shone with thousands of lights. Each light represented a story, a dream, a person fighting for something. And among all those lights, Clara Dubois was finally shining with her own light.